Hello everyone and welcome to a new video of the Magicavoxel mastering course. Today we're going to be talking about animation and I will show you some cool tips along the way. So let's get started. This is Magicavoxel, just opened fresh. So the first thing I will do is I will create a little character for our animation. So very quickly I will just click where it says modify and I will use the erosion tool and I will click it 10 times to have a small head of a character in the middle of our scene. There are other ways to create this, but I just wanted to show you the tool. So now we have this floating in the center of this cube, and I'm doing this because I want to deform this model during the animation, so I will let some room for us to do that. So then I will just paint it very quickly. And there we have it. It's just something very simple, so we have something a bit more charismatic as we go along on the tutorial. Just so you know, these buttons here can also do a bunch of very cool things. You can just check them out. For instance, the hull button will make it so your model becomes hollow. So if you're working with big scenes, you can click that to make your mountains and rocks hollow so they are less heavy on your program. And you also have some shapes here. If you wanted to start with a sphere or a cylinder, you know, you can replace your working area with all of these different mathematical shapes. Yeah, just wanted to show you that, but let's now start animating this dude. The first thing I want to do is to import a little image that I created to help us with the animation tempo, because it's a bit hard to do it on the beginning and over time you will learn how that works. But just to make things simpler, you can get this image on the description of this video, and what you need to do is just download it, and I have it right here. It's called animation reference, and you can just click it and you drag it and drop it into the software, and you will see that automatically it will just use whatever colors it can find to color the image. And by the way, this is a normal PNG image. Whatever you save as a PNG, you can drag and drop, and Magicavoxel will make it into voxels and color it with the colors of your palette. This is the closest colors that you can find in your palette. I will rotate this so it's vertical, and I will press the letter G so it's not cutting through the ground. Now I will just place this behind my model and I will use an orthographic view to move to a frontal camera. I'll just move it a bit to the side. So basically this is how we should animate this bouncy ball exercise so it gets a nice tempo. It will make it a bit easier for you. So this represents the frames, and we will talk about all of this in a second. And this is like how your object should be squashed and stretched. So let's select our object and move it all the way up because we're gonna start with that frame 0. In order to see your animation timeline, you need to click in this little arrow here on the top left, and this will open the Magicavoxel timeline. And you will be able to find a bunch of buttons here. We're gonna check all of them, so don't worry. But the first one that we need is the plus button here on the bottom right, that is to add and replace a keyframe. Basically, a keyframe is a little dot here in the timeline that will store the position of your object. And also, if you modify it, you will also store all of these modifications within this keyframe. So now that we created this keyframe, we can just click and drag over the little number here, the number in gray, and we can go to another frame. Let's say, for instance, frame 10, because you see this is a 10 frames animation. And let's move this guy all the way back and even through the ground a bit, so it's sitting on the ground line that we see here. Now what happens if I move my frame here? You'll see that it jumps back to the last keyframe that we stored. In order to store a new keyframe, we need to be on the position that we want and then click again the plus button. Additionally, if you wanted to change this position and store it, if we do that, we just change it and it won't be saved until we click that plus button again, and then it will save that position. But I will undo that because we want the position to be down there, and that gives us this here. So as you can see, if you create an animation on your working area, Magicavoxel will create an interpolation between the two frames that you created. This means that it will go from point A to point B on the fastest way possible. But in our animation, we want this to pick up speed when it's going down and also lose the speed when it's all the way back up. In order to do that, we're gonna start kind of copying the positions of these keyframes. So in frame 3, we want our guy to be up here. So then I will create a keyframe there. I will do the same for the other frames. In 5, it should be here. Roughly, it doesn't need to be perfect. Then 6 is pretty much fine. 7 is fine. 8 is fine. 9 seems to be a bit lower down. I will store that. And then in 10 is hitting the ground. So you see that if you want to play this, you can press and hold and it will just play the animation. Unfortunately, it won't play the animation in real time. It won't play it at 30 or 24 frames per second, which is the normal animation speed. It will just play every frame as fast as your computer can play them. There's not a play animation button in Magicavoxel at the moment in this version. Maybe on the future we'll get that, but right now we don't have it. You can either click on your gray 0 here and scrap your timeline, or you can just click and hold and that will kind of play your animation. So you can see that because we made these little changes in the middle, is slow and then fast and then hits the ground. So to go back, you basically can copy these frames over on the other side, and I will show you how to do that now. We see that in 9 we are here, in 10 we are here. So we would like to be back here in the frame 11 where we were on frame 9, because this is now the animation of it going back up. So what you can do is click to select the frame first, then press Ctrl Shift, and you can click and drag, and this will duplicate this frame. So now it seems that it didn't do it, but if you move to update, you will see that now that is updated. So you go down, hits the ground, and starts jumping back up. So you can do that to all of the frames. So go from 0 to 19 in this case, because it doesn't start at 1, it starts at 0. So your animation should be finishing in frame 19. Is up, goes down, bounces up, and goes all the way up. So in the middle, we have the same things here. So you could potentially count like 1, 2, 3, and go like 1, 2, 3 back. Select your frame, Ctrl Shift, click and drag it. And then we have 1, 2, and this one here. And this will basically give us this animation that if I play it, you will see that it will just play once and stop. If you wanted this to be looping, you can click this button here that says loop. And then when you click and play, you will see that your animation goes up and down. So right now we have an animation, but I want to show you some more tools. So let's go a bit deeper on the things you can do with the software. Some other things you will find here is the minus button will delete the selected frame. So no matter where you are positioned, it will delete the one that you have selected. To select one, just click it and then press the minus button to delete it. You can click and drag to move a frame to a different position. You can Ctrl Z to make it go back to where it was. Then these two arrows here, the difference with these two is that these two will move one frame forward and these two will jump to the next keyframe. The little dots are the keyframes. So this will jump from keyframe to keyframe. Amazing. The next thing to understand is that what you are seeing is the keyframes of the object that you have selected. So if I selected this object, the keyframe will go away because we only stored keyframes within this object. Now, if we press Tab and we go into the editing mode of this object, you will see that we no longer see those keyframes. That is because we can have editing keyframes and position keyframes. So right now we went into the object and we are seeing no keyframes, but we can start creating them. So for instance, let's do that by go back to the front view and notice how in the image that I had as reference, this bouncy ball stretches when it's falling. So let's create that effect within our object now. So we can see that in frame 0 is perfectly round. So this is the equivalent of no modification on our object. So let's press plus to store this keyframe. Let's start moving and we see that by frame 5, it's already starting to stretch. So if you want to stretch your object, something you can do is go to your transform tool here and then click on the scale tool here. And now if you hold shift, you can shift and drag your selection and this will stretch your object on both sides at the same time. So let's do that a bit, kind of matching the size of this sphere. Let's store that. So now you see that when it reaches frame 5, it will start stretching. So frame 6, there's a bit more stretch, so let's do it. Save that. By frame 7 it's really stretched, so let's go all the way. And frame 8, I would say it's already stretched to the maximum. Store that. And then frame 9 is the same. And then frame 10 is squashed. So let's move to frame 10. And the thing with Magicavoxel is that when you squash and then you go back, sometimes you will get results that are different. You see how my eyes now have less voxels than what I started with. So instead of that, I will copy and paste this frame, Ctrl Shift, click and drag to the 10th frame. And when I go there, I will have again my original one, and I will squash this one instead. So I will go all the way to the sides and all the way to the front and the back. And I will even make it flatter. Something like that. So let's store this. And this will translate into this animation. So it comes down, it stretches, and then it hits the ground and squashes. And then what we will do is start copying these frames to the other side. So let's Control click, Shift and drag all of them. Oops, you have to select it first and then click and drag. Select it and then click and drag. Same for this one. And then in frame 19, we want to have our original one back again. So if I start playing this now, you can see how I will just change to my attach mode so we don't have all those gizmos in blocking the view. And again, you see how it does the animation once and then it doesn't do it anymore. If we want to loop it, we can just click on the loop button here. So that will make it so it's continuously doing that deformation. So a problem that I'm seeing is that after frame 10, it jumps up and it doesn't change. So we will have to have another frame here to change that. So I will just duplicate this frame, Ctrl Shift, click and drag to have it pop back out. Yeah, so let's see how that works. Maybe I will have my frame 0 back here so it already is rounded for a while more. So let's see how that works. And here's our animation. So you can continue to edit this animation however you want. For instance, you could add a rotation, but bear in mind that you need to have this rotation added in every frame. So for instance, you could have it rotating a bit with the transform tool, rotation. You could just make it a bit rotated like that. And then when it's here, you will have to rotate it a bit more. And then some more. I'm doing this by eye, of course. And then I suggest you do it flat when it squashes, and then maybe it can just be rotated to the other side. We're gonna fix that in a second. I don't know why the interior is a different color, but it's no problem. So you see that adds an extra movement. Feel free to play with your animation and have some fun. I will just make sure that now we don't have broken colors on the frames. I kind of like this eye effect that we got, so I will just leave it. Create a new material here. And I think that's all I needed. So let's see how that works. So there you have it, that's the animation. And let's see some other things you can do. Now that we finished this, we could just change this to a layer and hide it, or just delete it, however you want. And here's your animation. Something else that you can do is that, let's say that you wanted, for instance, this to be jumping over something else. Let's say we have another object here that is like a box, and you want this to be jumping over this box instead of going through it. You will notice that if I move this up, of course, that won't be stored. So the trick to do that is to create a group with this button here. Then you move it up as much as you need. So check on your last frame, maybe when it squashes down, it should be here. And then delete the group, and this will change the original position of your animation. So if I play it now, you see that it just goes bouncing on top of this object instead. Something else you can do with the groups is, for instance, add a layer of animation on top. So right now you see that this is within a group, so we don't see any animation, but everything still works the same. And I will just create a second box right here, and I will make it so this object starts here, but then when it squashes, it's doing it over this box instead. And I will store this data, and this will make it so it go to the side and squash and then jump up, and you can continue to animate it to maybe jump on a third box. So then on the next time that is squashing down should be here. So you see how I'm adding more animation to this without really changing much. So it's jumping through the boxes. Nice. If you delete the group though, it will just stay on the last position that you had it before. So to go through all of the tools, I wanted to show you there is the Unpack animation. So if you go in and you click Pack Models to Animation, then you go out and you unpack them, Magicavoxel will create one model per keyframe that you created. You will lose your original animation, but you will get every keyframe you created as a separate thing in case you needed that to export to some software or something like that. The last button that we can use is the global time button. So you see when you have it clicked and you go into your animation, you can see the movement of your working area plus the movement of your little guy here that is being modified. If you click this button, you won't see anything other than your animation here taking place. So you see it, how it works on its own. And if we click this back, we see both animations playing at the same time. This also applies for animations from to other objects that you might be adding. So I think this is all I wanted to show you about animation in this video. If there is something that remained unclear, let me know in the comments and I will do my best to reply. Thank you and see you on the next video.